The hum of the docking bay was all Captain Liam Carter could hear as his small shuttle docked with a massive alien ship. The Illyrian vessel loomed above him, its metallic surface shimmering with streaks of deep blue and violet, unlike anything he'd seen before. He adjusted his toolkit and tugged at the collar of his uniform, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Diplomacy wasn't his strong suit. He was a mechanic, not a politician. But this mission required more than technical skills. The Illyrians were a towering, muscular species with a reputation for their sharp tongues and stronger tempers. They didn't think much of humans, often mocking them as delicate beings. Still, their ship was stranded, and no one else in the sector was willing to respond to their distress call. Liam had volunteered, knowing it was a chance to prove humanity's worth. As he stepped aboard, the air smelled faintly of metal and something floral, like the scent of alien blossoms. The Illyrian crew eyed him with thinly veiled skepticism, their bright golden eyes scanning him up and down. Liam wasn't short by human standards, but he felt dwarfed by their sheer size. He ignored their smirks and focused on the task at hand. The sound of heavy footsteps broke through the tense silence, and Liam turned to see who could only be their leader. Zyra, an Illyrian warrior, strode toward him with a confidence that could crush mountains. Her long, silvery hair flowed down her back, and her teal skin shimmered under the ship's artificial lights. Her sharp eyes locked onto him, sizing him up in an instant. "And this is our savior?" she asked, her voice carrying a mix of authority and mockery. "You're smaller than I expected." Her lips curved into a teasing smile. Liam straightened his posture, refusing to let her words rattle him. "Size isn't everything," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Let's focus on getting your ship back in working order." Zyra raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by his response. Bold words for someone so fragile. "Tell me, human, do you even understand Illyrian technology?" "Not yet," Liam admitted, walking past her to examine the control panel on the wall. "But I'll figure it out. That's what we humans do." Her laughter echoed through the corridor, drawing the attention of the nearby crew. "You're an interesting one. Most humans would stammer and bow by now." "I'm not most humans," Liam replied without looking up, his hands already running over the console. The system's interface was alien, filled with swirling glyphs and holographic projections, but he could sense its logic. Technology, no matter how advanced, always had a pattern. He just needed time to decode it. Zyra crossed her arms and leaned against the wall, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "You'll be disappointed, human. Our systems are far beyond your comprehension." "We'll see," Liam muttered, his fingers deftly navigating the console. Within minutes, he managed to bypass the first security lock, gaining access to the ship's core diagnostics. A series of holographic screens appeared, displaying data streams and error codes. He studied them intently, his mind already piecing together a plan. Zyra tilted her head, her amusement giving way to mild surprise. "Emph. Not bad. For a beginner." "Glad to impress," Liam said with a small grin. He moved to the next console, his confidence growing with each step. He didn't need Zyra's approval, but he couldn't deny the spark of satisfaction her change in tone gave him. As Liam worked, Zyra circled him like a predator inspecting prey. "You have guts, I'll give you that. But don't get too comfortable. Illyrian ships aren't forgiving to mistakes." "I don't plan on making any," Liam replied, glancing at her briefly before returning to the task. "And if I do, I'll fix them." For the first time, Zyra's teasing smile softened, just a fraction. There was something about this human's quiet determination that intrigued her. Most aliens would crumble under the weight of her presence, but Liam stood his ground, focused on the mission. After hours of work, Liam managed to bring some of the ship's systems back online. The lights flickered to life, and the hum of machinery filled the air. A cheer rose among the Illyrian crew, though it was quickly subdued under Zyra's stern gaze. "Well, human," she said, her tone carrying a trace of genuine respect. "You've surprised me. But don't think for a second that this means I trust you." "Fair enough," Liam said, wiping the sweat from his brow. "I'm here to fix your ship, not win a popularity contest." Zira chuckled, a deep, resonant sound that sent a shiver down his spine. "Let's see if you can keep that confidence, little human. The real challenge is yet to come." The soft hum of the ship's systems was a welcome change from the tense silence earlier. Liam Carter crouched under a console, tools spread out around him, as sparks flickered from the open panel. His mind raced as he tried to figure out the tangled mess of Illyrian circuits. Their technology was elegant but overly complex, relying on layers of redundancies that made even basic repairs a headache. But Liam wasn't one to give up. Above him, Zara stood with her arms crossed, her towering figure casting a long shadow. She leaned casually against the wall, her golden eyes watching his every move. Her mocking tone hadn't changed since their first encounter. "You humans must have a thing for punishment," she said, smirking. "You've been poking at that panel for hours, and it's still broken." Liam didn't look up. "If you think this is punishment, you should see me on a Monday morning." Her laughter rang out, loud and sharp. "Ah, humor. Is that how you cope with failure?" Liam finally glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. "It's how I cope with unnecessary commentary. You could try it." The crew around them exchanged glances, some stifling chuckles. Zyra's reputation as a sharp-tongued warrior made most people nervous, but Liam seemed unfazed. If anything, her bards fueled his determination. He wasn't about to let some giant alien intimidate him. After another 30 minutes, Liam finally stepped back from the console and wiped his hands on his uniform. "There," he said, nodding at the screen. "The power grid is stabilized. Your engine should be operational again, at least for a short jump." Zara tilted her head, examining the readings on the nearby monitor. Her smirk faded slightly as she realized he was right. "Imph. Lucky guess." "Hardly," Liam replied, packing up his tools. "It's called skill. You should try it sometime." For a moment, Zara just stared at him, her sharp eyes narrowing. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. Not the teasing grin she'd worn earlier, but something closer to genuine amusement. "You're bold for someone so small." "Boldness has nothing to do with size," Liam shot back. "It's about knowing what you're capable of." Her smile lingered as she turned to address the crew. "Prepare the engines for a test run. Let's see if this human's capabilities are as good as he claims." The crew scrambled to obey, their movements quick and efficient. Liam leaned against the console, watching as the ship's systems roared back to life. He couldn't help but feel a twinge of pride. The Illyrians might have doubted him, but he was proving them wrong, one step at a time. But the moment of victory was short-lived. An alarm blared suddenly, red lights flashing across the control room. The crew froze, and Zyra's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "What now?" she barked. Liam was already back at the console, scanning the data. "Looks like a coolant leak in the reactor core," he said, his tone urgent. "If we don't fix it, the whole system could overheat and shut down." Zira's jaw tightened. "How much time do we have?" "Minutes," Liam replied. "Maybe less." Without hesitation, Zyra turned to her crew. "Get to the core and stabilize the leak. Now." As the crew moved to carry out her orders, Liam grabbed his toolkit and followed. Zyra noticed and frowned. "Where do you think you're going?" "To fix the problem," he said simply. "Unless you'd rather let your ship explode." Her gaze bore into him for a moment before she nodded. "Fine, but stay out of my way." The reactor core was a massive chamber filled with glowing pipes and humming machinery. The heat was oppressive, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. Liam immediately identified the source of the leak, a ruptured pipe spewing coolant into the room. He stepped forward, but Zyra's hand shot out, stopping him. "This is dangerous," she said. "Are all humans this reckless?" "Only the ones who like living," Liam replied, pulling free from her grip. Now are you going to help me or just stand there looking impressive? Zira hesitated for a split second before grabbing a nearby tool. Together, they worked quickly, sealing the pipe and rerouting the coolant. It wasn't easy. The Illyrian tools were bulky and unfamiliar, and the heat made it hard to concentrate. But Liam's focus never wavered. He could feel Zira's eyes on him as they worked, a mixture of skepticism and reluctant admiration. Finally, the leak was sealed, and the alarms quieted. The room was still and silent, save for the steady hum of the reactor. Liam leaned back against the wall, catching his breath. Zira stood nearby, her expression unreadable. "You're not what I expected," she said at last. "Thanks," Liam replied. "I think." She smirked, but there was something softer in her gaze now. "Don't let it go to your head, human. You've only just begun to prove yourself." With that, she turned and strode out of the room, her confidence as unshakable as ever. Liam watched her go, a small smile tugging at his lips. For the first time, he felt like he was starting to earn her respect, even if she'd never admit it. And that, he thought, was a victory worth savoring. The ship hummed with life, its systems slowly stabilizing after the frantic repairs. Liam stood in the control room, studying a series of holographic displays. He had just enough time to catch his breath before the ship's alarms blared again, this time with a different tone, a deeper, more menacing sound. "What now?" Liam muttered, already moving toward the console. Zira stormed into the room, her expression sharp and commanding. "Pirates," she said, her voice calm but laced with steel. "They've spotted us." Liam glanced at the main display, which now showed 3 smaller ships closing in on the Illyrian vessel. They were fast and heavily armed, their weapon systems glowing a dangerous red. His stomach dropped. "You're kidding," he said. "We just got your ship working. Do these guys have a radar for bad timing?" Zira ignored his comment, turning to her crew. "Shields up. Divert power to the weapon systems." A younger Illyrian officer hesitated, his fingers hovering over the controls. "Commander, the weapons are still offline from the earlier damage." Zira's jaw tightened, and her golden eyes flicked toward Liam. "Human, can you fix them?" Liam frowned, scanning the displays. "Maybe, but not fast enough. They'll be on us in minutes." Her gaze narrowed. "Then what do you suggest?" He exhaled, thinking fast. "You've got auxiliary power in the engine systems, right? We can reroute that energy into a short-range EMP blast. It won't destroy their ships, but it could disable them long enough for us to make a jump." Zira stared at him, her expression unreadable. Finally, she gave a sharp nod. "Do it. Now." Liam didn't waste a second. He ran to the nearest terminal, his hands moving quickly over the controls. The Illyrian systems were still foreign to him, but he'd spent enough time working on them to piece together what he needed. As he worked, he felt Zira's presence behind him, her energy both reassuring and intimidating. "Don't mess this up, human," she said, her tone low but firm. "I don't plan to," he replied, not looking up. Outside, the pirate ships grew closer. Their weapons began to fire, bolts of energy slamming into the Illyrian ship's shields. The vibration shook the floor beneath Liam's feet, but he stayed focused, his fingers flying over the interface. "Almost there," he muttered. Another blast rocked the ship, and the lights flickered. The shield readings on the display dropped dangerously low. "Hurry," Zira snapped. "Done," Liam shouted, hitting a final command. The ship's systems roared as the auxiliary power rerouted to the EMP generator. "Fire the EMP," Zira ordered, her voice echoing through the room. A pulse of energy erupted from the Illyrian ship, visible on the main screen as a wave of blue light. It expanded outward, slamming into the pirate vessels. The displays showed their systems flickering and shutting down. The ships drifted helplessly in space. "Direct hit," one of the crew members reported. "The pirates are disabled." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, But there was no time to celebrate. "Engage the engines," Zyra commanded. "Get us out of here before they recover." The crew worked quickly, and the Illyrian ship surged forward, leaving the pirates behind. Liam leaned against the console, his body finally relaxing as the tension eased. "You did well, human," Zyra said, stepping closer to him. Her tone was almost warm. "Thanks," he replied, meeting her gaze. "I just saved your ship." "Again, you're welcome, by the way." Her lips curved into a smirk. "Don't get too comfortable. This isn't over yet." As if on cue, another alarm blared. Liam groaned. "You've got to be kidding me." This time, the alert was for internal damage. The EMP blast had overloaded some of the ship's systems, and fires had broken out in 2 sections. The crew scrambled to contain them. Zara turned to Liam, her teasing smile gone. "We need to split up. Can you handle one of the fires?" Liam straightened, gripping his toolkit. "I can handle it. Just try not to let your section explode." Zara chuckled, a sound both challenging and approving. "I like your spirit, human. Don't die." "You too," he said, already running toward the corridor. The heat in the engine room was intense as Liam arrived. Flames licked at the walls, and the air was thick with smoke. He grabbed an extinguisher and got to work, his movements quick and precise. Despite the danger, his mind was clear. He was used to working under pressure, and this was no different, except for the fact that failure meant death. After what felt like an eternity, the fire was out. Liam wiped sweat from his face, coughing as the smoke began to clear. He radioed the control room. "Fire's out. What's the status up there?" "Under control," Zyra's voice replied. "And still intact, thanks for asking." Liam smirked, despite his exhaustion. "Glad to hear it." As he made his way back to the control room, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had faced down pirates, outwitted their attack, and helped save the ship, all in one day. And for the first time, Zyra's teasing words carried something he hadn't expected: respect. He smiled to himself. Maybe being small wasn't so bad after all. The ship's corridors were quieter now, the alarms silenced, and the immediate danger past. Liam walked toward the control room, his steps heavy with exhaustion. His clothes were smeared with soot, and his muscles ached from hauling equipment and extinguishing fires. Still, there was a sense of accomplishment in his chest. They had survived, barely, and he had played a part in that. When he reached the control room, Zyra was there, standing tall and commanding as always. But there was something different in her posture now. Her usual sharp smirk was absent, replaced by a look of calm contemplation. She turned as he entered, her golden eyes narrowing as they scanned him. "You look like you wrestled a sun beast," she said, her tone carrying a faint trace of amusement. "Feels like it too," Liam replied, dropping his toolkit onto the nearest console. "But hey, the fires are out, and your ship is still in one piece. You're welcome." Zyra's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. "Modesty isn't your strong suit, is it?" "Not when I'm doing all the heavy lifting," Liam shot back, though his tone was light. Zyra tilted her head, studying him for a moment. "You handled yourself well today, better than I expected." Liam raised an eyebrow, surprised by the rare compliment. "Did I just hear praise from the great Commander Zyra? Someone mark the date." She rolled her eyes but didn't deny it. "Don't let it go to your head, human. I'm only stating facts." Liam chuckled, leaning against the console. "I'll take what I can get." The room fell into a comfortable silence, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. The crew moved efficiently around them, repairing minor damages and ensuring everything was operational. Liam noticed how Zyra's presence seemed to steady them, her quiet confidence keeping them focused. "Why did you join the military?" Liam asked suddenly, surprising even himself with the question. Zyra glanced at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Why do you ask?" "Curiosity," he said with a shrug. "You're clearly good at what you do. I just wonder what brought you here." For a moment, she didn't answer, her gaze fixed on the holographic display in front of her. Then she spoke, her voice softer than usual. "Illyrians value strength above all else. My family has served in the military for generations. It was expected of me." Liam nodded, sensing there was more to the story but deciding not to push. "And do you enjoy it?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's not about enjoyment. It's about duty, responsibility." "That's not exactly a glowing endorsement," Liam said, his tone gentle but teasing. She gave him a sharp look, but there was no malice in it. "Not everyone has the luxury of chasing what they enjoy, human." Liam leaned back, crossing his arms. "True, but it doesn't hurt to think about it once in a while." Zira didn't reply, her gaze returning to the display. Liam let the conversation drop, sensing that he had pushed her far enough for now. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was a part of Zira she kept tightly guarded, even from herself. Before he could dwell on it, a call came through the ship's comms. "Commander, we've detected another anomaly on the sensors," one of the crew reported. "It looks like residual energy from the pirates' attack." Zira straightened, all traces of vulnerability vanishing as her command persona took over. "Bring it up on the main display." The holographic screen shifted to show a glowing field of energy surrounding a cluster of asteroids. Liam frowned as he studied it. "That doesn't look like standard weapon residue." Zira nodded, her expression serious. "It's not. This is something else." Liam stepped closer, his curiosity piqued. Could be a trap, or something left behind by whoever was here before. "Then we'll investigate," Zira said firmly. Liam blinked at her. "Seriously, we just survived pirates and almost lost the ship. Now you want to go poking at unknown energy fields. Do you have a better idea?" Zira asked, raising an eyebrow. He sighed. "No, but don't say I didn't warn you if this blows up in our faces." Zira smirked, the teasing edge returning to her voice. "Don't worry, human. If it does, I'll make sure to blame you." Liam couldn't help but laugh. "Of course you will." The crew prepared for the investigation, and Liam found himself once again diving into the unknown alongside the Illyrians. As they approached the anomaly, he felt a mix of excitement and unease. There was something about this strange field that didn't sit right with him. Zira stood beside him, her confidence unshaken. "Stay close, human. I might need someone to blame if things go wrong." "Glad to know I'm your scapegoat," Liam replied with a grin. Despite the teasing, there was an unspoken trust growing between them, and as they ventured into the unknown, Liam couldn't help but feel that they were on the verge of something far bigger than either of them had anticipated. The anomaly loomed ahead like a glowing storm, its swirling energy field casting eerie shadows across the Illyrian ship. The crew worked in tense silence, their movements precise as they prepared for whatever lay ahead. Liam stood at a console next to Zira, his brow furrowed as he analyzed the readings. "This thing doesn't make any sense," he muttered, shaking his head. "The energy signatures are off the charts, but it's not consistent with any known weapon or propulsion tech. Could it be natural?" Zira asked, her tone calm but focused. "Maybe," Liam said, though his gut told him otherwise. "But natural phenomena don't usually form perfectly symmetrical patterns like this." Zira studied the display, her golden eyes narrowing. "Then it's either a trap or a relic. Either way, we're going in." "Of course we are," Liam said, his voice tinged with sarcasm. "Why avoid danger when you can dive headfirst into it?" Zira smirked. "You're catching on, human." The ship eased closer to the anomaly, its shields flaring against the outer edges of the energy field. The vibrations in the hull grew stronger, and the lights flickered as the ship's systems strained to adapt. "Shields are holding, but just barely," one of the crew reported. "Take us in slowly," Zira ordered. "We need to get a closer look." Liam braced himself as the ship pushed deeper into the field. The energy danced across the viewports, brilliant shades of blue and gold that seemed alive. It was mesmerizing, but also deeply unsettling. "Getting some strange readings here," Liam said, tapping the console. "This energy, it's not just radiation. It's reactive." "Reactive," Zyra repeated, her voice sharp. "To what?" "Us," Liam replied, his tone serious. "It's like it's responding to the ship's systems. Almost like it's—" Before he could finish, the ship lurched violently. The crew staggered, gripping onto consoles as alarms blared. On the main screen, tendrils of energy lashed out from the anomaly, wrapping around the ship like glowing vines. "We're being pulled in," one of the crew shouted. "Full reverse thrust," Zyra commanded. The engines roared, but the ship barely budged. The tendrils tightened, their light intensifying as they dragged the vessel deeper into the anomaly. The control room was a frenzy of activity, the crew scrambling to regain control. Liam's mind raced. He stared at the energy tendrils, their movements almost deliberate. "Zyra," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I don't think this thing wants to destroy us. I think it's trying to communicate." Zyra turned to him, her expression skeptical. "Communicate? It's tearing my ship apart, human." "Exactly," Liam said, his voice steady. "If it wanted us dead, we'd be gone already. But look, it's targeting the systems, not the hull. It's testing us." She frowned, her gaze flicking to the screen. The tendrils seemed to pulse in a rhythm, their movements almost purposeful. "What are you suggesting?" "We send a signal back," Liam said. "If it's trying to communicate, we need to respond." "That's a gamble," Zyra said. "And if you're wrong?" "If I'm wrong, we're toast anyway," Liam interrupted. "You said it yourself. This thing is either a trap or a relic. Either way, it's worth a shot." Zyra hesitated, her sharp gaze locking onto his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she nodded. "Do it." Liam didn't waste time. He accessed the ship's communication systems, quickly configuring a signal. He had no idea what language or frequency would work, so he used a basic universal code, a sequence of mathematical patterns designed to demonstrate intelligence. As the signal broadcasted, the ship trembled, and the tendrils froze mid-motion. The crew held their breath as the energy around them shifted, its color deepening to a rich gold. "Did it work?" someone whispered. The tendrils slowly retracted, releasing the ship. The lights stabilized, and the alarms went silent. On the main screen, the anomaly seemed to calm, its swirling patterns softening into a gentle glow. "Looks like it," Liam said, exhaling in relief. Before anyone could celebrate, a new display lit up on the console. A series of symbols appeared, unfamiliar yet strangely elegant. Liam frowned, studying them. This looks like a response." Zyra stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the symbols. "Can you decode it?" "Not yet," Liam admitted, "but it's a start." The crew murmured in awe, the tension in the room easing as the anomaly's threat seemed to fade. Zyra turned to Liam, her expression unreadable. "You took a risk," she said. "It paid off, didn't it?" Liam replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. Zyra's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. "Maybe you're not as reckless as I thought, human. Or maybe you're just lucky." "I prefer resourceful," Liam said, grinning. Zyra chuckled, the sound warm and unexpected. "Whatever you call it, you earned your place here today." The anomaly's glow dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging their presence. For the first time, Liam and Zyra stood side by side, united not by necessity, but by mutual respect. And as the ship drifted away from the anomaly, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The galaxy, it seemed, still had plenty of surprises in store. The ship was silent as it moved through the vast emptiness of space. The danger of the anomaly had passed, and the crew, though still on edge, seemed to breathe a little easier. Zyra stood at the front of the control room, her back straight, eyes focused on the stars ahead. She was lost in thought, but Liam couldn't help but notice how her usual sharp edge had softened just a bit. Liam, on the other hand, leaned back against one of the consoles, his fingers tapping lightly on the screen in front of him. He'd done what he could to help, but there was a nagging sense of curiosity he couldn't shake. What had that anomaly really been? Was it some ancient Illyrian relic or something more? His mind raced with possibilities, but there was no time to dwell on it now. Zira turned to him, breaking his train of thought. "I'll admit," she said, her voice steady, but with a hint of something else. "I didn't think you could pull it off." Liam raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Pull what off?" "Not blowing up the ship." Zira's lips curled into a smirk. "That, and actually managing to communicate with whatever that thing was." "It wasn't that hard," Liam replied, trying to sound modest but failing. "It was a risk, sure. But sometimes you've got to gamble." Her golden eyes narrowed, the teasing tone returning. "Gamble? You're a gambler now." Liam chuckled. "I'm a mechanic, not a gambler. But sometimes you have to trust your gut." It worked, didn't it? Zira's smirk deepened, but there was something more in her expression now. "You're lucky. You always get by on luck, don't you?" Liam didn't hesitate. "I'd call it skill. But luck's got a hand in it too." Zira stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. There was a slight shift in her posture, a softening he hadn't expected. "I see. You really think you're that good?" He couldn't help but feel the challenge in her words. "I know I'm good. You've seen it firsthand." For a moment, they locked eyes. Liam felt his heart race, but he held her gaze, refusing to back down. Zira had always been a tease, but today there was something more beneath her usual sharp wit. He didn't know if it was respect or something else entirely, but he wasn't going to let this moment slip away. Zira's lips curled again, but this time it was more of a smile. "You really are full of surprises, human." "I try," Liam said, his voice low but confident. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. The usual tension between them had shifted, but neither of them acknowledged it aloud. Zira turned back to the console, breaking the moment. "We're clear of the anomaly," she said, her voice returning to its usual command. "But we're not out of the woods yet. We still have the pirates to deal with." Liam exhaled, glad for the change in subject. "Right. The pirates. I almost forgot about them." "Don't get comfortable, human," Zira warned, her gaze returning to him. "This isn't over." "No one said it was," Liam replied, his smile still lingering. "But I'm up for it." Zira's eyes softened for a brief moment before she turned back to the crew. "Prepare for a short jump. We need to get to a safer location and regroup." As the crew began their preparations, Liam couldn't help but watch Zira. There was something different about her now. The teasing, the challenge, it was still there, but there was an underlying respect now. And maybe, just maybe, there was something else. He couldn't tell if she was just being her usual, unpredictable self, or if something had actually changed between them. "You're quiet, human," Zira said, turning her head slightly. "What's on your mind?" Liam snapped out of his thoughts. "Just thinking about how much you enjoy messing with me." Zira's smile returned, her eyes gleaming. "What else is there to do? You're so interesting." "I'll take that as a compliment," Liam said, walking toward the crew. "But next time, let's avoid the whole almost dying thing, yeah?" Zira gave a sharp laugh, her voice carrying through the room. "You think I can control every little thing that happens?" "I'm just saying," Liam said with a wink. "It might be nice to keep things a little less eventful." "Eventful," she repeated, arching an eyebrow. "That's one way to put it." They shared a brief moment of silence, and for the first time, it wasn't filled with tension. There was no teasing or challenge, just a quiet understanding between them. Liam wasn't sure what it meant, but he liked it. The ship's engines hummed to life as the crew finished their preparations. Zira stepped away from the console and gave him one last glance, her gaze soft but unreadable. "You're not bad, human," she said, her voice low. "But don't get too comfortable. There's more to come." "I wouldn't dream of it," Liam replied, his smile still in place. Zira turned back to her duties, the weight of her role settling back into place. But there was a new, subtle shift in the air between them. It was unspoken, but both of them felt it. The next chapter of their journey awaited, and whatever came next, it was clear that their relationship, whatever it was, had changed. And for Liam, that was a challenge he was more than ready to face. The ship drifted through the endless expanse of space, the distant stars twinkling like tiny diamonds in the dark. The tension of the past few days was finally starting to lift, but Liam still couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The pirates were behind them, the anomaly safely passed, and the Illyrian ship was intact. They had survived, but the journey wasn't over yet. Liam stood in the control room, watching the crew work. They moved with precision, their focus unwavering, but there was a difference now. He could feel the change in the air, an unspoken shift that had come after the ordeal with the anomaly. Zira had been different too. There had been moments of respect, even something more, but neither of them had spoken of it. And that left Liam wondering. He heard Zira's voice behind him, low but firm, as always. "Human, I need to speak with you." Liam turned, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He had grown used to her commanding presence, but there was something about her tone now that made him pause. "What's up, Zira?" She motioned for him to follow her. As they walked down the hallway, the familiar hum of the ship filled the silence between them. They passed the crew, who nodded respectfully at Zira, but kept their distance. Liam noticed that Zira wasn't as quick to make eye contact with him as usual, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. Once they reached a quieter part of the ship, away from the rest of the crew, Zira stopped and turned to face him. Her golden eyes met his, but there was something more guarded in them now, something he hadn't seen before. "You did well," she said, her voice steady. "Better than I expected." Liam raised an eyebrow, not sure what she meant. "I thought you already said that." She smirked, a hint of amusement returning to her features. "Not like this. You're not just good with technology, human. You have a way of getting things done, even when it seems impossible." Liam couldn't help but feel a surge of pride at her words. "I told you I wasn't just some mechanic." Zira nodded, but there was a deeper sincerity in her eyes now. "I see that now. But you also proved something else to me." "What's that?" Liam asked, leaning against the wall, his arms crossed. He had a feeling he knew where this was going, but he let her continue. "That humans don't give up. Not when it counts." She paused for a moment, her gaze softening. "You could have run from the danger, like some others would have. But you didn't. You stayed, you helped, and you made a difference." Liam's chest swelled with pride at her words, but he didn't say anything right away. Instead, he gave her a lopsided smile. "You make it sound like I'm some kind of hero." She raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smirk. "A hero? No, but you're not the coward I thought you were either." "Well, I'm glad I could surprise you," Liam replied, his tone light, but his heart was pounding in his chest. There was something in the air now, something different. It was clear that Zira was finally acknowledging something that had been there all along, but neither of them had spoken about. Zira studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, she stepped closer, her presence suddenly overwhelming. "You've earned my respect, human," she said, her voice low. "And that's not something I give easily." Liam stood a little straighter, his pulse quickening. He wasn't sure what to say to that. "I didn't need your respect," he said, his voice steady, "but I'm glad I got it." Zira's eyes locked onto his, her gaze intense and almost searching. For a moment, the ship's hum seemed to fade into the background. Neither of them moved, the unspoken tension growing between them. Finally, Zara broke the silence, her smirk returning. "You know, human, you're not as bad as I thought. I'll be watching you." Liam couldn't help but chuckle. "I'm sure you will. I wouldn't want it any other way." For a brief moment, their eyes met, and something shifted. It was subtle but there, a quiet understanding, something neither of them had been willing to admit before. But the moment passed as quickly as it had come, and Zara turned away, her usual composure returning. "Get some rest," she said, her tone back to its usual sharpness. "We have a long journey ahead, and don't think for a second that I won't hold you responsible if things go wrong." "I wouldn't dream of it," Liam replied, watching her walk away. As Zara disappeared into the depths of the ship, Liam stood there for a moment, lost in thought. He wasn't sure what had just happened, but he knew one thing for certain: things were different now. He had earned her respect. And maybe something more. He couldn't deny the shift between them, the strange bond that had formed over the course of their time together. As he turned and walked back toward his quarters, a smile played on his lips. He had no idea what the future held, but one thing was clear: he wasn't going to be easily forgotten.